over at BangTheBook.com, I've got prop stuff up. I got some generic prop betting tips and also the things that I've actually played here already for the national championship game posted over there. Got a game preview for you. Got some prop write-ups from Charles J. We've got some system pick stuff from Alan Moody. Lots of stuff for the national championship game posted over there. Also, an opening line report for the conference championship round of the NFL playoffs, which is coming up here on Sunday. Daily NHL, NBA, college basketball, all sorts of stuff going on. Just head on over there and check it out. I promise you won't be disappointed. And of course, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. One guest to chat college football and college hoops with me today. That is professional handicapper Kyle Hunter from HunterSportsPicks.com and also BetterSportsPicks.com. Kyle, how's it going today, man?
Going well, man. Pretty good Monday morning here. Big game tonight. Here we are at the final game.
Yes, sir. Here we are at the final game, national championship. The Tigers will win. Just depends on if it's Clemson or LSU here in this one. And if I sound a little bit jumbled here this morning, it has been a busy-ass morning, man. You know, a lot of the prop betting stuff not posted early on, which is remarkably frustrating to me. You talk this thing up like it's the Super Bowl. They got, 16 days between the semis and the national championship game, and books still unwilling to put themselves out there with these low limits on the prop bets. A lot of stuff going up over the weekend and here this morning. Massively frustrating for both of us.
Yeah, it is because, we figured last week that everything would be up, plenty of time for us to talk about it here today. And here we are late Monday morning and still not that much up. It's pretty surprising. Like we were talking here beforehand, it's not like they couldn't plan for it and there was plenty of time to get ready. So a little bit frustrating. It makes this morning a little bit more difficult to talk about too many of the props, but we'll do the best we can.
Yeah, that's all we can do here is do the best we can. I mean, I feel like last year, we had individual defensive player props. I feel like we had a lot more stuff for Clemson and Alabama last year. And, I guess stuff will get posted throughout the day, but, obviously very tough for us to talk about those types of things here on today's show and tough to write about them as well. But before we get into the prop stuff here, Kyle, we did touch on this game a little bit last week, as you mentioned. LSU -5. This one came off of 5.5 over the weekend. And also, too, the total now coming down a little bit, as low as 67.5 out there.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see the line movement here. One thing I did want to point out about the side here, and this should pretty much tell you everything you need to know as far as where the sharp money is, where the public money is. You got a 5 at Bookmaker, 5 at Pinnacle, Bovada at 6.5, MyBookie at 6.5, LSU -115. So some pretty interesting odds there. Clearly the public side is LSU, Clemson, the sharp side in this one. I can't disagree with that. This is one of those where, as we talked about last week, this is a really big reaction to one game. And, I feel like this is one of those games where, if you take Clemson and you lose, you say, you know what, this is the type of bet that wins 55% of the time. These are the types of overreactions to where I have to bet it. If it loses, it loses. I can feel good about the fact that, I have to fade an overreaction of that type. So while it certainly could lose and LSU could win this game by 14 points or more or something like that, I do feel like Clemson is the right side when it comes to, not overreacting to one game you just saw.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Again, like we talked about last week, coming into the semifinals, even with LSU and the opportunity to play here in New Orleans, very close to Baton Rouge, obviously, as Dabo Swinney told us over the weekend, because, he had to. I had Clemson -1, coming into this hypothetical national championship game. It's 6 points off from my number based on what we saw in the semifinals. And again, yeah, LSU took Oklahoma in the woodshed. Oklahoma wasn't that good of a football team. We knew that over the course of the year. I talked about it all the way in the lead up to the semifinals. They'd play one good half. They'd play one bad half. They struggled both times with Baylor, lost to Kansas State. Oklahoma just wasn't that good of a team. Clemson played, in some people's minds, the best team in the country in Ohio State. And if Ohio State wasn't number one, Clemson was number one in a lot of those people's minds. So massive overreaction here, to say the least. I grabbed this one of the rogue 5.5s here this morning. I was hoping for a 6. We never really got one. I'm not posted up at Bovada, so I'm not taking the 6.5 there. But I may even play some alternate spreads here on Clemson. +4, +3.5, +3, stuff like that. And again, I mean, this isn't because I'm in love with Clemson. I think that they do ultimately win the game. I will have a small piece of the money line here. But again, just a massive overreaction to what this number would have been. And if I get caught with my hand in the cookie jar here and my pants down, you know what? Props to Joe Burrow, props to Ed Orgeron, props to LSU for what will have to be a great performance tonight.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the fan side of me, I would like LSU to win based on, what happened in the last game. And also I am rooting for Joe Burrow. He's likely to be a Cincinnati Bengal next. Obviously, he used to be a Buckeye. I like Burrow. I like LSU in general, what they've done. I think one thing that should be pointed out is some people have said in the lead up to this game, I've seen this on TV and some of the obviously very deep analysis there. It's one of those spots where they've been using Clemson's last game against them. Clemson did not play their best game against Ohio State, or Clemson wasn't very impressive. Ohio State was a really good team this year. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Buckeyes fan, but Clemson played an excellent team. And it may well be that Ohio State was the number one team. And, they were power rated number one by many people for a lot of the season. So the fact that Clemson didn't look great against Ohio State, I don't think that should be a huge knock on them. Ohio State's just that good, especially compared to Oklahoma. So, there's a lot of difference between those two teams. And I think Clemson may be getting discredited a bit too quickly because of that performance.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, like I talked about, and we'll transition over to the prop side of things here. Like I talked about, one of the props that I'm kind of looking at here, this is sort of my long shot prop, is the double result prop. LSU leads at halftime, Clemson wins the game. And that's at +800. You can find that at BetOnline, also over at DSI. And the reason being, think back to that semifinal game. Clemson had a hard time getting up to the speed of that game, getting up to the talent level of Ohio State, getting up to a planner and a preparer like Ryan Day with the athletes at his disposal. Ohio State should have put that game away in the first half. They should have been up 28-0 at the break, maybe 28-7 if you give Clemson that pick 6. But it was a situation where Clemson just kind of had an adjustment period there. I think the same could be very possible tonight. If that does happen, and I did take a Clemson position pre-flop, you may end up getting Clemson +8, +8.5, something like that from a live betting standpoint, because I think there is a possibility that it does take the Tigers, the Clemson Tigers that is, a little bit of time to adjust to this game, to that LSU talent level. But Brent Venables makes adjustments, man. Jeff Scott, Dabo Swinney, they make adjustments. You don't do what Dabo's done as an underdog in the playoff semifinals, in bowl games against elite teams, without the ability to adjust. So that could be a possibility here tonight, and that is kind of my long shot prop here. If LSU rides the wave of the crowd, goes out there, Burrow puts on a show in the first half, you damn well know Clemson's going to adjust, and I don't see Clemson ever being out of this game. Much like the Ohio State game, I don't see them ever being out of it. So LSU first half, Clemson second half at +800, something I just went ahead and took a little bit of a shot on.
Yeah, I think that's definitely worth a shot because, who's better at adjusting than Brent Venables? I think that LSU's offense is more likely to have success in the first half than the second half, in my opinion. That's why, while sometimes I like to take unders early on in these championship games, I wouldn't like the under early in this game. And I will say that I would lean to the over on the total here. And I put up a free write-up on bettersportsfix.com about what exactly my number was and my thinking for why I didn't end up playing the over, but I do still lean to the over. I think that LSU is more likely to start out quick than is Clemson, partially too because Clemson has played such a bad schedule throughout the course of the season. This is a Clemson team that's really played a weak schedule, but once they get into that game, they get a little bit ways into playing that really tough opponent. They're more likely to rise to that level. and they have just such good coaching. I'm not saying anything against LSU's coaching. Very good coaching staff, but I don't think anybody's coaching staff is better than Clemson's. So I like that as well. I think that LSU being ahead in the first half and Clemson winning the game overall would not surprise me at all. So plus what is 800? Yeah, that's a good. I think that's a pretty good price.
Yeah, I thought it was worth a shot. I mean, again, you're not looking to go nuts with a lot of these props and some of these exotic bets and stuff like that. You take your bigger positions on the things that you're more comfortable with, like something like a side and total here for this game. But I do think that there are some opportunities out there. And another one that I kind of took a look at here, and this one's only available at 5 dimes based on what I've seen. The wording on this prop is absolutely asinine, but it's LSU 2 timeouts remaining first. So basically, LSU calls the first timeout between the two teams. I don't know why the hell it's not just first timeout. Clemson minus 110, LSU minus 130. This one was actually minus 120 earlier on. Maybe I'm out there moving lines or something like that. But my thought process here is, we talk about Venables and we talk about him and his adjustments, but also something that makes him so good is that he has the personnel on defense to confuse the opposing quarterback. The back seven for Clemson, very, very versatile. Simmons can line up in coverage in the slot, in coverage on the outside. He can play safety. He can rush the passer. You can put guys like Tanner Muse in different places. You've got the odd fronts for Clemson, the unbalanced fronts that really bothered Ohio State in the second half of that semifinal game. They give the quarterback a lot to look at pre-snap. And I think Joe Burrow, even though he's such a cerebral guy, even though he's such a smart quarterback, it can be tough here in a game of this magnitude. So I think even though people will look at this game and say, well, Clemson's going to call the first time out because it's going to be such a pro LSU crowd. Yeah, that could be the case. But I think what Venables does, disguise coverage, disguise blitzes, give Burrow a lot to look at with those pre-snap reads, those pre-snap matchups. I think LSU to call the first time out makes a lot of sense here. Again, I got it at minus 120. It's now minus 130, but I still like it there.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a real strong opinion on that one in general. I do think it's interesting that, the wording of that one is who has 2 timeouts left first. I mean, unless somebody's given 4 timeouts to start with that we don't know about, it seems like it would have made more sense to word it differently.
Yeah, I don't get it. Whatever. Anyway, so what are some prop bets you're kind of taking a look at here for the big game tonight?
Well, I'll tell you, I've only bet one here so far, and that was Travis Etienne over 138.5 rushing and receiving yards combined. This was minus 120 yesterday on 5 dimes. It's now minus 140. I like it less at 140, obviously. I like it somewhat. I think that the way that last game played out with Trevor Lawrence running the ball so much for Clemson against Ohio State, I think they did that because they knew Ohio State was going to be keyed in on the run game with ETN, and Ohio State's a tough team to run the ball on, just run it up the middle and try to beat them that way. It worked. Trevor Lawrence running really worked out well. I would be surprised if Lawrence runs quite as many times as he did last game. I certainly think he'll probably run a few times. But Travis Etienne's been really good throughout the year, and he's a guy that can make people miss. Very good at catching passes out of the backfield. I think Lawrence could be looking to him a good amount here tonight with, LSU's going to be dialing up some pressure. LSU has very good safeties. I think that Etienne getting some dump offs is very likely in this one. And I do think that he'll get some big runs as well. This is a Clemson offensive line that's been very good this year. LSU defense has done pretty well against the run, but they're not as good against the run as Ohio State, certainly. I think that Clemson will at least try to keep the run game going, and you would think it would make a decent amount of sense to try to keep Burrow and LSU on the sideline to run quite a bit. I think ETN will get quite a bit of action tonight.
Yeah, along those same lines, and in fact, of course, as I'm looking here, DSI wound up taking this one down, but they had Travis Etienne at 3.5 receptions over minus 135. As I look out there at 5 dimes, it's 4 with the under juiced a little bit. But I do think that Etienne is a massive part of the game plan here tonight for Clemson. So if you find a reasonable one, and BetOnline and DSI both have their player prop section, you should be able to find Etienne receptions there. I think he's a big part of the offense tonight, as you just mentioned. So if you want to play him for yards, for the total yards prop over at 5 dimes, you want to play receptions, I think both of those are good. LSU's really aggressive defensively. They like to pressure with their linebackers. They like to send, some safety blitzes, stuff like that. They're willing to trust their corners on the outside. And I wonder about Trevor Lawrence's trust level in T. Higgins, in Justin Ross, in some of those guys on the outside. They weren't good against Ohio State. And LSU's talent level, specifically at the cornerback position, is on par with Ohio State's. So I wonder about Lawrence's trust level in those guys to get separation. They got very little of it against Ohio State, and both of those guys, of course, banged up in the semifinal game as well. I think Lawrence uses ETN a lot. I think whether he has to as a safety valve with pressure or just because it's a big part of the game plan tonight for Jeff Scott, I think ETN's fingerprints are all over this game. I like the over yards you mentioned. I like the over receptions. And I even took a little bit of a smaller shot on first touchdown at plus 500.
Yeah, and I mean, even receiving yards over 44.5 makes some sense too, because if you like over 3.5 or over 4 on pass receptions, and you think he's going to be a big part of the game plan, probably over 44.5 receiving yards at even money or minus 110, I should say, at 5 dimes. I think that makes sense as well. I do think that ETN will be a much bigger part of the game plan than he was last game against Ohio State.
And again, I mean, you're thinking about these player prop things in terms of game flow, how you expect this to go, which matchups you think these coordinators can look to exploit. And both of us think that ETN is one, and the tough thing here is, you look over, and a lot of people love to play overs on player props in the Super Bowl, national championship. They're going to see Joe Burrow. They're going to see Burrow putting up 400, 500 yards a game. They're going to want to play the overs, but which LSU receiver gets the most targets? Who draws the best matchup here against this really good Clemson secondary? I don't know, because as we talked about, Venables so flexible, so versatile with the guys in the secondary. I'd have a hard time betting any Justin Jefferson over, any Jamar Chase over. Maybe it's Terrace Marshall. I don't know. Maybe they use Thaddeus Moss a little bit more here in this game. The problem is I just don't know. I think ETN has good matchups, and the middle of the field will be vacated with some pressure. I don't know which LSU guy I would want to highlight. So you stay away from it.
Yeah, I was going to say that the LSU receiver yardage props are pretty ridiculous. I mean, Chase at about 99.5 or 100, Justin Jefferson at 100, 99.5 minus 105 on the under at Bovada, and minus 135 on the over. It's hard to take an over at a number like that. We don't know how one game will go versus the next as far as, if you have good pass receiving options like Burrow does, certainly one guy will have a pretty good number in this game, but it's hard to say who that will be. I think it's a little better to look at Clemson and say ETN wasn't a big part of last game, and I think that's helped the number be a bit lower than it would have been. Like you, I like to try to look at some of the under props, especially in the Super Bowl. Obviously, as we just mentioned before, we don't really have near as much to look at here for this game. But in general, I wouldn't go crazy with the over props, even though I kind of do lean to the over in this game. Usually these over props are pretty pushed up there pretty high because that's what everybody wants to bet is the over.
Yeah, I'll throw one under out there. I think Edwards-Helaire under 96.5 rushing yards is a decent look tonight. I mean, again, he should be healthier than he was against Oklahoma, where obviously they didn't need him in the Peach Bowl anyway. But despite what J.K. Dobbins did to Clemson not last week, whatever it was, 2.5 weeks ago, despite what Dobbins did, it's still very, very hard to run on Clemson. I think as much as I've talked up the back seven for Clemson, in particular the secondary, I still think LSU has to move it throwing the ball. So I don't really like Edwards-Helaire as a runner. I think it'd be more effective as a receiver in this game. But I do like the under 96.5 rushing yards for him. That's minus 117. And part of it to me here, too, is that he only had 2 games this season where he went over 97 yards with under 15 carries. One was Vanderbilt and one was Florida. I don't think he gets a heavy workload tonight, which would require him to have a very high yards per carry. If he breaks off one run and it kind of busts up this prop, it is what it is. But I just don't think he gets the workload and the volume to get up close to 100 rushing yards tonight.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would rather take the the receiving yards for Edwards-Helaire over 53.5 than I would take the rushing yards over. If you remember too, Dobbins was wide open out of the backfield a lot against Clemson. I think that Edwards-Helaire will probably have a pretty good game when it comes to pass receiving. I think it's a little less likely that he gets a bunch of runs. Like you say, obviously, if he breaks one for 70 yards or something, you're going to lose. But you take that chance on props like this, and I would tend to like the under on that one as well.
Well, and just as a side note here, to circle it back to that Fiesta Bowl, you and I talked about, I mean, J.K. Dobbins is a damn good running back. He's a dual purpose threat. I think that he may have been as good as Ezekiel Elliott was for Ohio State in a lot of different ways. But you and I talked about the just enormous drop off between Dobbins and Master Teague. The drop off between Dobbins and Edwards-Helaire is not the same, but Edwards-Helaire is not J.K. Dobbins. So that's something people need to keep in mind here too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously he's not Master Teague, but he's also not J.K. Dobbins. So I think that, there is a drop off there, and LSU likes to throw the ball. They have plenty of options in the passing game. I think that they'll throw the ball quite a bit here. I think that's probably still their best chance to move the ball, like you said. I'll ask you one here real quick. What do you think of the Trevor Lawrence rushing yards? I see 52.5 is what it's set at. The under's got some juice on it at 5 dimes. I know a lot of people will be interested in that one. So what do you think of Trevor Lawrence rushing yards?
I think it's tough because, we saw obviously Lawrence do so much with his legs in that game in the Fiesta Bowl. And like we just talked about with ETN, the fact that he wasn't really a focal point has probably kept his numbers a little bit on the lower side here from a prop standpoint. I think when we talk about Lawrence and what he did, in the Fiesta Bowl, I think it's kind of inflated this number a little bit to the point where I'm not sure I'm too interested in taking it. And I will mention this. Last year's national championship game against Alabama, obviously a Clemson blowout, so Lawrence didn't have to use his legs a ton. The rushing yards prop in last year's national championship game, the line was 14.5. He went over. He had 27. It was one of my favorite prop bets, and it did cash. But it's a big adjustment year over year. As much as I think he could be a focal point, from a running standpoint, that line's just too inflated for me to take it.
Yeah, I would take the under if I was taking that one. I think that, it's just such a big adjustment. If he breaks a huge run here, then you're going to lose, like we said, but on the other one. But, I don't think it's likely he's going to get a 70-yard run here. And I don't think that Clemson probably wants him to run as much as they did last game. Like I said, I think ETN's likely the focal point. And, while some people would remember what they just saw in that last game and want to take the over on Lawrence rushing yards, I would be hesitant to do so. I would lean to the under.
Well, and I remember reading right after the Fiesta Bowl, I think it was over at The Athletic, something about Trevor Lawrence was watching game film with the backup quarterback, or maybe it was Jeff Scott or somebody, and they noticed that they could run with the quarterback on Ohio State's defense because of that, really heavy pursuit that they have rushing the passer. That was part of the game plan. That was something that they wanted to incorporate. Now that LSU's seen it a little bit more, probably something that they don't want to incorporate as much. So again, ETN, your safety valve there. So I think that makes a lot of sense. There could be a correlation there between Lawrence under rushing yards and ETN all-purpose yards, receptions, stuff like that. Maybe It's one where both of them come in together.
Yeah, that would be my lean as well. I think that makes sense. If you think ETN's going to be such a focal point, likely Lawrence takes a bit of a backseat, at least in the rushing game.
All right, so let's talk for a second here, as this is our college football last look, our final look here at the 2019 season. I always like to ask this question of my guests, and I'm going to go ahead and pose it to you here on today's show. As we take a look back at the college football season as a whole, what worked for you? What didn't work for you? What are you going to look to incorporate, for the next season here? As again, win totals and games of the year are not that far away.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had gotten to work a little bit earlier on win totals. I did do extremely well on the win totals that I played. I wish I would have played more of them and been able to get on those earlier. It's something that you and I have talked about before, that the time that those are put out is so much earlier than it ever used to be. I'd like to be more ready for that this coming year, and I think I will probably bet more of those. As far as the game-by-game plays, I finished the year, or I'm at this point, I guess I should say I have one play left here, but 13-13 on sides for the year in college football. And on totals, I was 62-46. So this is a good year for me, 75 and 60. I'm never going to complain about hitting 55%. I do wish I had played a little bit more volume. I've been a little bit shy to play as many games as I used to, partially because I know that it's hard on clients to have, you're going to have more swings when you play more games. And, I get this pretty often in college basketball. I pick 13 or 14 games when there's 150 games to pick from. And people say, what are you doing? I mean, this is too many plays. But, if you think in relation to how many games there are, it's not as much as if you play 3 or 4 games when there's, 30 games to pick from in a slate normally. So I think in college football, I would probably like to play a little bit more volume next year because I feel like I do have edges, especially in the totals market, to where I'd probably like to play a little bit more than what I did this year. So I'm probably going to go a little bit heavier on the volume, like to get a little bit earlier on the win totals. But in general, I'm happy with my season this year.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was tough because I started out really poorly in college football. Things got a little bit better as the season went along. I had a hard time separating the bad baseball season that I had from the start of the college football season. And just overall, in general, I need to just take a different perspective here. A lot of times it's, oh, what's going to go wrong next? I know a lot of people that had a very bad college football season. A lot of closing line value didn't work out. And that shit, that permeates everything, man. I mean, that poisons everything that you do here in this business. And that's something that I have to really focus on. If I have another bad baseball season, which obviously I'm not planning to do, I can't let it carry over to college football. And similarly, if I do really well in baseball, I can't let that become any level of hubris going into the college football season. It has to be two independent things. Whether it's part of the same bankroll or you have a separate bankroll for each sport, you just have to keep them separated, and I think that was something that really bothered me early on in the college football season is that I got so excited to dig into a different market, get a head start with that. And then when the results didn't really line up with the work that I had put in, it was very frustrating. Another thing is the week-to-week power ratings adjustment. A lot of times I would kind of fall in love with some of the early quant line moves or, sort of overvalue some of the line moves that we saw during the week. And I would wind up being on teams or wanting to be on teams that were just overinflated in the marketplace. So I think I need to trust my own numbers and trust my own work a little bit more than just kind of being a slave to the market and being a slave to, what happens in those 6 days between the opener on Sunday and the closing line on Saturday. I got to trust myself more. And that just, that ongoing crisis of confidence that I've talked about before, I don't know if I'll ever fully conquer it, but going into 2020, it is something that I aspire to do. And it sounds like something that you aspire to do as well. Trusting more in the work that I'm doing as opposed to looking at the work that everybody else is doing to shape this market.
Absolutely. And I think that it's a really good point what you pointed out about when you have a bad run, then you start thinking, okay, so I'm doing something different. Let's get this started out. And then you have a bad week one or whatever sport it is. You have a bad run just briefly to start that. And you say, here we go again. This is just wonderful. I mean, I know personally myself, it's one of the hardest things to do is, when you're in a rut, to trust yourself and just keep going and not get too down on yourself. And at the same time, like you said, when you're doing really well, you don't want to just think, oh, okay, here we go. I got this, because you can't get too low and you can't get too high, but it's also far easier said than done as something like that. I don't know too many people who are great at that. I know some people who are full-time sports bettors that still struggle with that. And certainly it's something that everybody who is going to be serious about this needs to try to do the best they can about is trust their work. Don't get too high or too low. And I think, like you said, don't look at what else is going on in the marketplace as much as what you did with yourself. I mean, if you've had a good research, a good amount of time put into something, go ahead and trust that rather than seeing, some steam move or some kind of, move that you think may be justified. And then later in the week, you say, I don't know how much I like that one anymore. If it's better, I'd rather lose based on, it's something I like and it just lost, than I would thinking, well, somebody has a decent point on that, so I'll play it. And then at the end I go, I didn't really like that much. Why did I play it? So I think that's true. Trusting yourself is pretty important in this.
And I think it's also a matter too of, trusting what's tangible. I mean, so many people out there are modelers. They spit out the numbers early in the week. They play them based on that. The emotion is taken out of it. And that's something that I think I had a hard time with this college football and really this NFL season too. I don't think situational handicapping matters in those two leagues anymore. It just, by and large, it really does. I mean, maybe Minnesota struggled last week because they were playing, back-to-back road games and stuff like that. But also, the bye week helped San Francisco. They were just better prepared. Is that situational? Maybe, but that's a really extreme example. In college football, you got 6 days between games. Travel's better than it ever was. Nutrition, dietary things, all that. Medicine, recovery time's better than it's ever been. You've got 6-7 days between games. I don't know if situational handicapping matters that much in non-extreme circumstances. I think maybe I fall back to that too much as a crutch here in the handicapping process. That's something that I want to change in football specifically going into the next season.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think situational handicapping means more in college basketball than it does in college football. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to just totally get rid of it. But at the same time, I do think that some people think it's worth more than what it is in college football. So I agree that I think that, just the numbers and getting the better team should mean a little bit more.
Well, we'll have plenty of time to talk college football with season win totals, games of the year, all that type of stuff. That'll probably be out in April. So, not that far away at all whatsoever. But real quickly here, before we transition to the college basketball side of things, I know you've been doing some free write-up stuff over at bettersportspicks.com. And I presume if you find any other props here throughout the day, you'll write them up over there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. You read my mind there. If I find some more props during the day that I like, I will put those up at bettersportspicks.com in the free members area. Right now, everybody can see that. So if you just go over to bettersportspicks.com, you can just see that for free. In the future, you'll have to have a sign up just to log in for free to see it. You won't have to pay anything. But this is something that I'll be working on more as basketball season's going on. And it's something also where you're going to be starting to see me put win totals in it at the beginning of next summer or in the spring or whenever it is that I bet those. So those will be free. I'm not going to charge anything for that. And you can go over to bettersportspick.com and sign up for the free members area. And you can also sign up for the free picks newsletter there as well.